The Husky had ignored their daughter for 16 months. Then one Tuesday he stopped ignoring her, and what he did next, nobody in that family has ever fully stopped thinking about. Storm was a 3-year-old Siberian Husky who had been in the Okafor household since before their daughter Amara was born. He was not a cuddly dog. He was not the kind of animal that sought people out. He maintained a comfortable distance from everyone in the family, appeared when food was present, and otherwise moved through the house on his own schedule, sovereign and self-contained. Nobody worried about Storm. Storm did not require worrying about Amara. Was 16 months old when that changed. On a Tuesday afternoon in late February, Storm did something he had never done. He followed Amara from the kitchen to the living room, waited while she sat, followed her back to the kitchen, sat 6 inches from her on the tile floor while she ate her afternoon snack, his blue eyes tracking her movements with an attention he had never given anyone in that house. Her father, Tobias, watched from the counter. He assumed Amara had dropped food. She hadn't. Storm followed her for 3 more hours. When Tobias put Amara down for her late nap, Storm sat outside the door for 40 minutes until she woke up, then followed her out. His wife, Renata, came home from work and saw it immediately. She was a high school biology teacher, not a veterinarian, not a nurse, but she had been around animals her whole life, and she said what Tobias had been thinking. That's not normal for him. They watched it. That evening, Storm remained within 6 feet of Amara for the entire dinner hour. When Renata picked Amara up to change her, Storm followed to the changing table, sat beside it, and watched the entire process with the focused stillness of a dog in the middle of a task. Tobias thought, food. Something dropped on her clothes. Some smell she picked up from something. He changed her onesie, wiped her hands. Storm did not move away. By 8 p.m., Amara had a low fever, 99.1, nothing alarming. She was fussy, which Renata attributed to the fever, and they gave her a small dose of infant acetaminophen and put her to bed. Storm lay down outside her door. Tobias tried to bring him to the living room. Storm looked at him and returned to the door and lay down again. At 10:40 p.m., Storm began to whine, not continuously, a sound that paused and resumed, like something asking a question it had already asked 17 times. Renata was already half awake. She went to Amara. The child was still, breathing but wrong rhythm breathing, too shallow, too slow for a toddler in ordinary sleep. Her face had the slack quality of a child working too hard to do something that should require no effort at all. Her skin was warm in a way that felt different from the fever of 2 hours earlier. Tobias drove. Renata held Amara in the back seat and talked to her continuously. Amara's temperature at triage, 104.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Drive Serge Fontenot, pediatric emergency, ordered a full workup within 8 minutes of arrival. The results came back inside an hour. Amara had a urinary tract infection that had progressed to early-stage kidney involvement, a condition called pyelonephritis, which in toddlers often presents with nothing more than fussiness and a fever that looks entirely manageable until it isn't. Dr. Fontenot said, toddlers don't always show the classic signs. The progression from low-grade fever to serious systemic involvement can happen in a window of 6 to 12 hours. You caught this at exactly the right time. He paused. Another 3 to 4 hours and we would be having a more complicated conversation about hospitalization and treatment timeline. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Dogs detect infection through the volatile compounds produced by bacterial activity. Compounds carried in breath, in skin, in the ambient air, around a person whose body is fighting something it has not yet won. A dog's olfactory system resolves these signals at concentrations so low they register 8 to 12 hours before any external symptom the human eye can read. Storm had been following Amara since the early afternoon. The infection had been building since at least that morning. He had been tracking it the entire time. Tobias had been watching him think about dropped food. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Amara came home 2 days later with a completed antibiotic course and a clean follow-up scheduled for the following week. Storm was in the living room when Renata carried her in. He rose immediately, crossed to them, pressed his nose briefly to the side of Amara's neck, and exhaled. Then he turned and went back to his corner of the living room and lay down. The same corner, the same easy indifference, the same self-contained distance he had always kept from everyone in the house. Except this time, when Amara crawled toward him 20 minutes later and sat down next to his side, he didn't move away. He had not let her do that before. He hasn't moved away from her once since. Tobias asked the veterinarian about it at Storm's next annual visit, not because he doubted what had happened, but because he wanted to understand the mechanism. The veterinarian, who had spent 22 years in small animal practice and had heard many things, listened to the whole account without interruption. Then she said, "Urinary tract infections in toddlers produce a very specific and measurable change in the body's odor output. The bacterial presence, the immune response, the change in the child's urine composition, all of it alters the chemical signature a dog reads in the ambient air. In a husky especially, with a working olfactory history and an extraordinarily sensitive scent processing system, those compounds are readable early, well before a thermometer gives you anything to act on." She paused. "The following part was," she said, "harder to quantify scientifically, but she had observed it in practice many times. Dogs who detect illness or danger in a household member frequently intensify their proximity behavior specifically, not toward everyone, toward the one source of the chemical signal. The fixation looks inexplicable from the outside. From the dog's perspective, he was going to the only place the information was." Tobias thought about this on the drive home. He thought about how long Storm had maintained that distance from Amara. 16 months of polite coexistence, of keeping to his corner while the small, chaotic person learned to exist in the same space. He thought about what it must have taken for an animal that's self-contained to cross the room and sit 6 inches from someone for 3 hours. He thought about the word food, how clean it was, how complete, how entirely wrong. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Next video. A dog who spent 4 days circling one corner of the backyard. What the family found there, buried under 2 inches of topsoil, is something their 4-year-old should never have found first.